She is family now. She came into our lives, not with the burst of trumpets or the grand arrival of fate, but with a quiet kind of presence, like sunlight slipping in through the window at dawn. At first she was just a name spoken softly over meals, a story shared between laughs, a guest at the table who listened more than she spoke. We didn't know how deep her roots would grow, how easily she would become a part of us. She brought with her a gentleness, a sincerity that didn't ask for attention but earned respect. Her smile was patient, her laughter low and genuine, and slowly, without trying, she began to fill the spaces between us. We found her hand helping without being asked, her voice offering calm in moments of storm. She was there in the small things, remembering a birthday we forgot, brewing tea just how each one liked it, giving us pieces of herself through kindness. She didn't need to prove anything. Yet by being herself, she wove her presence into the very threads of our home. At first it was hard to say when she crossed that invisible line, from outsider to someone we would defend without hesitation. But we began to feel it when she spoke, and we listened more closely, when her sorrow touched us like our own. It was the way she stood with us during losses, held us during grief, laughed with us during nonsense. We stopped thinking of her as an extension of someone else, and began to see her as herself, an individual with her own story that now shared a page with ours. We saw her offering herself in ways no obligation could demand. She cared for the old with reverence, taught the young with patience, never once asking for recognition. She knew the unspoken codes of belonging not by instruction but by instinct. And when conflict rose like thunder, she was not afraid to speak softly into it, offering peace without submission. It is in such moments, these tests of spirit, that the truth of family is revealed, not in blood but in loyalty and love freely given. She stood beside us not only in joy, but in the quiet difficulties, in the messy middle of family life, where tempers fray and silences stretch long. She never flinched at the imperfect parts of us. Instead she embraced the flaws as part of the whole, never judging, only understanding. She carried burdens that weren't hers to bear, lightened loads that no one had asked her to touch. That is the kind of love you don't often find, one that chooses you over and over, without need for ceremony. We learned to lean on her not out of convenience, but because her strength made space for our weakness. We started sharing secrets, not because she asked, but because we trusted her not to misuse them. She never tried to change us, but somehow, being around her, made us want to become better. And even on the days we forgot to say thank you, she remained. Because to her, love wasn't transaction, it was commitment, and that commitment turned a stranger into kin. We remembered how she cried when our world cracked open, how her hands held ours through pain she could not fix. She did not offer cliches or hollow comfort, she simply stayed, and in her staying, we found solace. We realized family is sometimes chosen, not by birth, but by the courage to love completely. She stitched herself into our memories, holidays where her laughter echoed in the kitchen, nights where her stories kept the dark at bay, early mornings when her footsteps were the first sign of warmth. There was no pretense in her love, only truth, and that truth began to shift our understanding of what family could mean. Not just shared blood, but shared burdens, shared joys, shared silences that felt like understanding. The children began to look for her first, asking for her when scraped knees needed comfort, or when bedtime stories begged for her voice. She became the one who knew everyone's favorite meal, who saw the hurt behind the smiles, who made this house a home simply by walking through its doors. Over time the bonds became so natural, so necessary, that we could no longer picture the shape of our family without her. She had become part of the rhythm, of dinners and disagreements, of laughter echoing through the walls, and soft apologies left on pillows. She was the first to step in when things broke, whether hearts or furniture, and the last to speak ill of anyone. Even in frustration, she chose grace. Even in disappointment, she chose compassion. She didn't raise her voice, but her presence spoke volumes. When she entered a room, the room softened. She reminded us of who we wanted to be, more patient, more present, more loving. Not because she preached, but because she lived it. When others stepped away in anger or pride, she remained. And in remaining, she taught us what loyalty looked like. She saw all of us, our best and our worst, and still called us her own. It was not what she took from us, but what she gave that made her family in the deepest sense. Even the elders, sometimes slow to embrace change, saw something in her that went beyond familiarity. It was in the way she listened, not just with ears, but with her whole self. She remembered stories from their youth that others forgot. She made their lives easier not with grand gestures, but with small consistent acts of love. She cooked their meals, the way they liked them, listened to their past as if it were her own history. And somewhere along the way she became a keeper of tradition, not by claiming it, but by honoring it. She never tried to replace anyone, or erase what came before. She simply added to it, layer upon layer, like a quilt stitched with care and respect. And in doing so she earned a place no bloodline could guarantee. When she smiled, it felt like legacy. When she cried, we felt it across the walls like a shared ache. No longer a guest, no longer just someone's, she was ours. Not because we named her so, but because she lived her way into our hearts. Her strength wasn't loud or showy, it was steady, like the tide. She held the family through storms, even when her own heart was trembling. She made sure birthdays weren't forgotten, that grievances were mended, that joy had a seat at the table. She reminded us to laugh when the world grew too heavy, and to rest when pride pushed us too hard. In quiet ways, she became the backbone, and yet, she never asked for credit, never demanded praise. If anything, she deflected it, insisting others had done more, but we knew the truth. We saw the way she stayed up late folding hope into the corners of laundry, heard the way she soothed anxieties with just the right word. She was the soft light at the end of a long day, the reason why home felt safe. We called her daughter, sister, wife, but none of those words were big enough. She was more. She was the person who through love rebuilt us when we didn't know we were falling apart. And in the years to come we would speak of her not in grand tales, but in the everyday language of memory. She always knew how to calm him, someone would say. She taught her that recipe, another would add. She would be there in the scent of her favorite flowers, in the lullabies sung to new generations, in the kindness passed down like family silver. Her legacy wouldn't be carved in stone, but carried in gestures, because what she gave was not for display, it was for keeping. She didn't just join our family, she reshaped it with tenderness and grit, and even when distance, time or fate pulled us apart physically, her presence remained. In every celebration, every reunion, there was always a place for her. Not out of obligation, but because we could not imagine the wholeness of us without her. She was not an addition, she was a foundation, and in that truth, we learned a deeper meaning of family, not just born, but built. She never sought titles or roles, she wore them naturally, mother when needed, friend when hearts were heavy, healer when words failed. There was no need to assign her meaning, she gave it herself through action. When people came and went, some leaving behind nothing but footprints in dust, she left marks on the heart. Her love did not expire with circumstance. Even those who once questioned her place now turned to her instinctively. She became the compass when we lost our way, the storyteller who reminded us of who we were, the bridge when we grew divided. She made room for others, always, without shrinking herself. And that space she created allowed us to grow, to soften, to forgive. Perhaps the truest thing about her was this: she was exactly what family should be, not perfect, not without flaws, but fiercely loyal, endlessly generous, and always choosing love. In a world where connection is often fleeting, she remained. She stayed. And in staying, she became our constant. So now, when we say she is family, we do not mean it as a courtesy or convenience. We say it as a truth, forged in shared tears and laughter, in hard-earned trust, and countless moments of quiet love. We say it knowing full well that blood may tie us, but it is love that binds. She was not born into our family, but she was born for it. And because of her, we are stronger, more whole, more loving. She did not need to carry our name, to carry our hearts. We are who we are because she walked in and decided to stay, not for a season, but for always. She gave more than she ever took. And now, she is written into our stories.